This episode is part one of a three-part series in which I'm going to show you how I took an image I found on the internet of what I believe to be a structure from a video game. I'm going to make it a real object that will go on top of my tabletop. Hey everybody, welcome to Game Terrain Engineering. As I said, this is going to be a multi-part project. This is part one. I'm going to show you how I took an image I found on the internet of this structure, and I believe this image is from a video game. The only way I can explain it is take a look at it. So, it has this pixely look. It looks like it may have been a screenshot from a video game. And I thought there was something about it I liked, and I thought it would be fun to try and recreate that for my own tabletop. I have a game of Frostgrave coming up soon, and I just thought it sort of fit the center. It would make a great centerpiece for the particular mission that I'm going to be running. So one of the things I do whenever I start considering doing a project is I start documenting it. I have a journal here called Game Terrain Engineering. This is just a notebook that I keep. I write down brainstorms, ideas. If I'm on the internet and I see an image, I sketch it out or just make note of it. Sometimes I print out photos and I tape them in there so that I can, I carry this with me a lot. So if I happen to be somewhere and I'm bored, I can maybe document some ideas. But I've been using this a lot over the last few days because since I saw this image, I've been wanting to recreate it. And I started doing some rough measurements on graph paper and also in my notebook here, but it just wasn't working. Two-dimensional drawing just wasn't cutting it. So what I did was I went out to Tinkercad and I designed it as a 3D model that I could rotate and look from above and below and side and all that. And so that's what I'm going to show you in this episode, is how I took this image and converted it to a 3D model of my own in Tinkercad. And then at the very tail end of the video, I'm going to add on some excerpts of me cutting out some pieces for it. I haven't completed it yet, so you're only going to get about the first third of the structure. But in the next video, I'll continue on, and by the third video, it'll be completed and painted, and hopefully I'll be able to compare it to my original model, and hopefully it'll look the same. So I hope you like this project. Let's take a look at how I converted the image into a 3D model using Tinkercad. So to get this project started, I have logged into Tinkercad and I've opened a new project, which opens on this empty workspace here. When you open a new project in Tinkercad, it always gives it some funny random name. Here we've got Fantastic Rotus Snicket. I'm going to click it and just rename this pedestal. And I have to do a couple other quick changes or quick tweaks before I get started. Tinkercad always defaults to millimeters for the measurements. I'm going to actually change this. I click Edit Grid, and I'm going to change it to inches. And the reason being is I'm going to be using 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch foam for this model. So by switching to inches, it'll just be easier for me to verify measurements from Tinkercad with the actual measurements that I cut out the foam. The other thing Tinkercad does is it creates a default size work plane. And by default, it's usually about 8 inches by 8 inches. I'm going to actually increase this to 16 inches on a side. And the reason being is this will just give me a larger gridded work plane to use. Each one of these large squares is 1 inch. And you can see that there are 8 small squares. So it's broken down into 1/8 of an inch. These just make it easy to line things up and to also drag them and size them to the correct dimensions you need. So now that I've got my work plane set the way I like, I am going to go ahead and start with the base of this pedestal. Now I know this base is going to alternate between a big base, small base, big base, small base, and they're going to be stacked one on top of each other. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start with the bottom base. And I'm going to make it 9 inches by 9 inches. So I just drag it out here. Now, one thing I want you to notice is it's increasing by 1/8 of an inch increments as I drag. There we go. And I'm going to I'm going to zoom out just a bit. I'm going to drag this one, and I'm going to make it also 9 inches square this way. Keep going. I'll drag the back one a little bit. 9. Okay, so there is my 9 inch by 9 inch base. You'll notice down here it says snap grid 1/8. This is just a setting that you can make to where every time you move your mouse, it's going to jump in those increments. So right now, I'm going to set it to 1/4, and here's why. Because I'm going to be using 1/4 inch foam and 1/2 inch foam, a lot of the things I'm going to be building here, I just want them to go ahead and snap to the nearest 1/4 inch because that's the thickness of my foam. I can always decrease this to 1/8 or 1/16 if I want some finer control of the alignments and movement. But for right now, in design mode, I can just stay with 1/4. And I'm going to zoom in on the side of this. Now, if I click here, you'll see it's 1 inch. All right. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more, and I'm going to click the top here, which controls the height. This little bar controls the height of the object. And when I click the mouse and hold it down, when I move my mouse down, it's going to move, and it's going to decrease in thickness by 1/4 inch. 3/4, 1/2, 1/4. See how that works? So I want this to be 1/2 inch right there. Now, if this had been set to 1/8, I still could have gotten it down to 1/2, but it would have just taken 2 times as many decreases in the height of this, the little steps that it takes to get down to the 1/2 inch thickness. So there is my 9 inch by 9 inch by 1/2 inch thick base. Now, I could just go ahead and draw another box, but I'm going to go ahead and just do a Command C and a Command V, and that just makes an identical copy. Here, all I need to do is shrink this down to 8 inches on the side. So let's keep going right there. And I want this stacked on top of this. Now, if this is 1/2 inch tall, I need to raise this 1/2 inch. And I use this little black cone to do it. I click and hold, and it's going to jump also by 1/4 inch. So there's 1/4, 1/2. I drag it out here, and I can easily eyeball this and center it. But the easier way to do it is to select both objects, click the Align button, and then use the center axis there and the one here. And that just lines them up perfectly. So I've got a 8 inch by 8 inch square, 1/2 inch thick, sitting on top of the 9. Now, I need to do this again. So I could draw more boxes, but it's just going to be easier to select them. Command C, Command V, there's a duplicate. Raise this up. Now this time I'm going to raise it up 1 inch. There we go. And then I'm going to drag it on top. Now I can tell this is centered and it's over it. Well, actually it's not. If you look here, you can see that it's not. I can use the arrow keys to shift it. But rather than try to tweak it, I'm just going to select all the objects again, select Align, and align along this axis and this axis. And now I have these 4 square pieces of foam that I will cut. They'll be stacked one on top of each other to make the base of the final pedestal. The next thing I want to add to the pedestal are some ornaments for the 4 corners on the top here. So before I do that, I'm going to select all 4 of these stacked pieces and group them so that they will act as one object, and then I can just move them around. And I can also change the color like that. So I'm going to set the pedestal aside because now I want to work on these 4 corners. So what I'm first going to do is, remember I'm sort of working after an image that I found on the internet. So I'm going to shrink this 1 inch by 1 inch down to 1/4 inch thick. There we go. And I want to cut out a portion of it. So let's shrink this box down to 1/2 by 1/2. Let's see, right there. And I'll just put that right here. I'll blend these two or group these two to cut out that portion. There we go. I'm going to need 2 of these, so I'll go ahead and do a Command C and a Command V. So I've got those 2. And now I want a piece that goes in the middle here, but that has an indentation. So there'll be a slight lip on this bottom base and the top base. So to do that, I'm going to draw another object. This one I'm going to make slightly different dimensions. I'm going to make it 3/4 of an inch. Sorry for the shifting here. Let me just zoom in on it. There we go. There we go, 1/4. And I want this to be 3/4 inch long, so I'll grab back here and bring it in right there. I also want it to be, let's make it 1/2 inches tall. So right there. I'll make a copy of it, paste it, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'll put those together. There we go. That looks right. I'm going to go ahead and group them. And I'm going to change them to a different color just so it'll be easier to distinguish. I'll make it yellow. Alright, so now what I need to do is I need to place this on top of this and center it. So I'll bring it over here and let's see. Well, again, I can eyeball it until it's centered. Not too bad. I did pretty good on that. But I also need to raise it up. So I'm going to raise it up until it rests on the surface right there. Alright. Now I'll just take this one. Now I can group these or select both, and I can see the height is 3/4 inch. So what I'm going to do is raise this one up 3/4 inch. 5/8. Come on, there we go. 3/4. And I will put it over this like that. And that looks pretty good. There is my corner embellishment. Alright, so I need to make, I'm going to group this, and I'll change it to yellow just to make it easy to spot on that green. I'm going to make 4 copies of this. There we go. And I need to rotate them. This one will go in this corner. This one I'll rotate like that. This one like that. And this one like that. Alright, so now to place them, let's move this back here. This one here, this one there, there, and there. Now, the height of this is 2 inches, so I'll go ahead and, let me focus on this one. I'm going to go ahead and raise it up 2 inches by grabbing here and just moving it. 1 inch and 2 inches. I'm going to snap this back to 1/4 just for speed purposes. Alright, and then that one is going to fit on the corner here, right there. And let's focus on this one. Raise it up 2 inches, just like that. There. Keep working my way around. Raise it up 2 inches. There we go. Put it right there. And last one, right there. Alright, zoom out. Raise it up 2 inches. Let's rotate this so I can see the, there we go. 2. And bring it in and put it right there. Now, you may notice that there is a slight overhang here. So again, I'll just change this to 1/32. Let's try 1/16 and see if that gives me enough fine control. Nope, I definitely need to make it 1/32. So there we go. That one is lined up. Let's look on this edge. That edge looks good. I can zoom in a little bit here to see. Yep. Let's go to this one. Take a look. That one looks like it's lined up along that edge, but it's overhanging this one, so we'll just move it that way. Now, again, I don't have to do this. This is just going to be a digital model. But, you know, I can be a perfectionist sometimes, so I want it to look right. So there, I'm going to move that one this way, and it looks like it's good there. And so the last one is this one, and it should be overhanging on the other side. Nope, no, it's short. All right, there we go. All of the pedestals now are in their proper placement. Now, when I actually physically make this thing, I may find that I want to move these in, you know, a certain distance, like maybe like that. And I may do that. That actually kind of does look a little better, I think. So, and I can measure those as needed using the real pieces of foam and get them to be symmetrical. But you can play, once you've created these as digital models, you can play around with them and move them around and see where they see how you like them in different positions. So there are the 4 pedestals, and the next thing I need to do is to make the steps. Now it may look like I've skipped a step right here because you're seeing some stairs, but I did this for a purpose. I'm going to rotate this around, and I want you to notice that all of the stairs are slightly different. Here's a top-down look, bird's eye view. And then right here, this set of staircase has a 1-inch pad and a 1/2 inch drop. This one right here is a 1/4 inch walk, 1/2 inch drop, or a 1/4 inch drop. 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. This one right here has a 1-inch pad and then a 1/4 inch drop, like this, and so it's obviously the longest one. And then this one right here goes it goes half, quarter, half, quarter, half, quarter. Now the reason I'm showing you this is supposed to be used in games, tabletop games. Now specifically, I'm creating this for a Frostgrave game that I have coming up, but this could be used in any kind of RPG as a centerpiece. And if you're going to be using miniatures, your players are probably going to want to be able to use the staircase with their miniatures. And anything less than 1 inch, and you're going to sort of have to angle the miniature off of it. It's just not gonna be able to sit without tumbling on any of these 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch gaps. So what I did was, even though this looks long, it is 7 inches long. So, and I'm going to put 4 of them all around the thing. But I'm going to make these removable so that this is portable. I haven't decided yet how I'll attach these, maybe with magnets, or maybe they'll just stick up against it and be loose. But the fact remains is, after looking at all 4 of these options, I do like this one. But again, this is a 1/2 inch step, and it's just not wide enough for a miniature to sit on this properly. Now, if you use a miniature that doesn't have a 1-inch base, it might work. But most of the miniatures I use, the monsters, the creatures, and the players' miniatures, they tend to be closer to 1 inch, 3/4 to 1 inch in width or length. And so you're going to need a wider step for it to work. So for that reason, this one is not going to be suitable. This one is not going to be suitable. And it came down to this one and this one. And the only reason I don't really like this one is there's only 4 steps. And if you're going by 1 inch equals 5 to 6 feet of game length, 5 feet, then this means that you're dealing with a 2.5 foot drop here, which that's a pretty big step. Now, for an ornamental pedestal like this, something, maybe that's fine in your game and you would be okay with that. Normally, I would be okay with that because, this is just supposed to be allow the players to run up the stairs, and since they're 1 inch wide, you can actually incorporate it in your game's movement scale. But I don't know. I just like this longer one. I think it's, and I also copied this and put it around there so I could see what it looks like. And it does create a very large model, but I just like the look of it. And if you don't, when you make yours, use one of these other options to make a shorter staircase. But I'm going to go with this particular staircase, and so I'm going to delete these out, and I'm going to show you how to make this. It's very simple. To create this staircase, I'm going to start with a basic block out front here. Now, the top of the pedestal here is 8 inches across. Each of these small stands is 1 inch roughly. That leaves 6 inches between them here. If I want a 1 inch gap on the left and a 1 inch gap on the right, that basically means I'm dealing with a 4 inch wide staircase right there. Now, the pedestal is 2 inches tall. Remember, these are each 1/2 inch tall, and there's 4 of them. So I'll raise this up to 2 inches right there, and that will be the top of my stairs. So all I have to do now is just copy and paste and keep shrinking it down. I just did a copy, I paste in front of it here, and I'll drop it 1/4 inch. Copy, paste, drag it out. Oop, drag the wrong one there. And lower it 1/4 inch. Right there. Now remember, I've got my snap grid set to 1/4 inch, so every time I lower it, it should automatically snap down to the next lowest quarter.
1/4 inch. So there we go. All right, do this again. I really don't like the way that Tinkercad pastes an item inside the existing one, but oh well. All right, look, messed up, wrong one. I need to drop the height down. There we go. All right, copy, paste, drag it out here, grab the right one, down 1/4 inch. From the side, you can see 1 inch, 1/4 inch down. All right, we're almost done. Copy, paste, move it out. Oh, move it out here. Right there. Drop it down 1/4 inch, and I've got one more. All right, drag it out. Right there. Drop down 1/4 inch. Boom. There we go. All right, now with the staircase completed, I need to make copies of it. So I'll do a Control-C, Control-V. I'll rotate this one 90 degrees this way. Paste another one. Rotate it 90 degrees this way. And one more. And we'll do a full 180 on this one. All right. So this one will go here. I'm just eyeballing this. I can fine tune it in a moment. And I'll move this one here. And finally, this last one will go here. And there we go. This gives me enough of an idea of what the final model is going to look like. I like that. 4 stairs all the way around, some little embellishments on top, nice little staggered base here, and there you go. I've measured out a 9-inch square and an 8-inch square piece of foam. I'm just cutting them out right now. All right, and this one will sit on top of that like so. Need to cut 2 more of those. Okay, so I have 2 9x9s and 2 8x8s, and before I start gluing and cutting grid lines, I want to point out something here. I have found the center point of each, and then I have measured a 1/2 inch from each edge in and drawn a line. I haven't gone all the way to the corners, and the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to have to cut out on the 2 9-inch pieces of foam. I'm actually going to have to cut out a notch. This is where the staircase is going to come in, because if you remember, beneath it, the 8-inch is sort of going to be recessed a little bit like that. So for the staircase to go flush, I'm going to have to cut out a notch to match up with the 8-inch beneath it. I'm not going to cut a full 4-inch. The staircase is going to be 4 inches wide. I'm not going to cut a full 4-inch width. I'm just going to leave myself enough space that I can cut each staircase individually and fine tune it. The staircases may vary a little bit in their width just by enough, and I don't want a lot of wiggle room in there. So I'm just going to give myself enough room so that when I have the staircases built and I test fit them, I can slowly whittle away from the sides until I get the fit that I want. So now that I've drawn those lines, I'm going to go ahead and grid the top 8-inch one in full, and then I'll grid the lower ones just around the outer edge, because I'm going to need to continue those lines on the edge so that when you see it from the side, you'll see that there's brickwork. And that's it for this episode. I have the 4 base pieces cut out and gridded. In the next episode, I'm going to tackle the staircases, 4 of them, and the 4 corner embellishments. And then the episode after that, part 3, the final part for this series, I will paint everything up, texture it, paint it up, and get it assembled, and then compare it to the original model. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below, and I'll see you next episode.